the essence of my talk is about how do I shift an institution to become more innovative, more open, and more accomplished as a teaching institution. This is about the future of learning and some thoughts about KPU as a case study, anticipating that future that was so well described by Dr. Grace this morning in her keynote presentation. But in the same vein, the Chronicle for Higher Education has a short piece which came out last year. It's very US focused, but it's worth a read. They identified that in the last 5 years, it can be confirmed that the digital environment is fully entrenched in every institution of higher education, especially in the classroom. That public and government want more evidence of the return on investment. Accountability is increasing. And that lifelong learning with stackable credentials is becoming the norm. There are fewer four-year degrees being issued in the US these years than there are post-baccalaureate small credentials with addressing certain competencies. And the notion that you need to front-end load your education right at the beginning and then stop is out the window. This tome has a piece about the students of the future, largely around demographics, sadly, rather than the nature of the student, but certainly demographically, we have a more and more diverse population in North America, huge growth in Hispanic student population in the US, which is very good. There's also a problem with respect to costs, that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That's true to some degree also in Canada. Plus, there simply aren't enough people in North America. I don't know why immigration is such a problem. We need more and more people, especially in Canada. This piece didn't say anything about the impact of new media on students, but I think we know about that to some degree, and they're watching their behavior. In terms of the faculty of the future, what's very interesting is that the professoriate is graying, just like me. The number of professors above the age of 65 has doubled in the US since 2000. And people are either not retiring because they can't afford to, or they're not retiring because they don't have to, and they're just staying on. So about only 1/3 of the people of faculty retire sort of on schedule to collect their pension. That creates financial burdens, so it means that the number of part-time versus full-time faculty is actually increasing. And lastly, they talk about new models for the faculty, differentiation between teaching faculty, research faculty, more team-based teaching along with an instructional designer, and having more flexibility and choice for faculty to teach where they choose, perhaps having one job on a campus and other jobs working online, or in my institution, because it's part of metropolitan Vancouver, the faculty freely teach at different institutions at the same time. There was a large section, very interesting section, on the future of learning itself, and again, we saw a lot of that. The first dimension is that competencies, and these are the competencies of Fox in Portuguese. I don't know why that came up. But the fact is that higher education will not be funded or organized increasingly around seat time. It will be funded, employers, funders, and students increasingly want to know what you can do and what you know irrespective of how you learnt it. So we're talking about competency-based degrees and badges and small micro-credentials that will generate for you certain competencies that your employer needs. The fact that you have a BA from a nice university is going to be less and less relevant. This discussion has been around for a while, and the American Association for Colleges and Universities in 2007 put out this list of the essential learning outcomes for the 21st century. I think we've heard them over the day already. The notion that you need to know things, you need certain skills, you need a good sense of personal and social responsibility. Looking forward to Dr. Nakayama's presentation next. And you need to know how to use that information and those skills to do something useful. So the focus shifts to what is learned and not how, and to what students can do rather than just talk about. And then the emergence or re-emergence of new ways of assessment, including prior learning assessment to validate informal ways of learning from experience, and then the documentation through portfolios. The third idea, again, is this one of front-end loading. This is a thought experiment from the Stanford Design School. What if we didn't just have 4 years of education, a little bit at the front end? Maybe students can just receive a lifetime of learning opportunities, and they can cycle back through and come back to the university as they need to over a lifetime of learning. And to our earlier presentation after lunch, higher education is increasingly powered by data analytics, and our ability to be able to use the data that we are collecting and to make sense of it and perhaps do some agent-based modeling. In fact, perhaps we can be more predictive, but much more so provide more personalized approaches to education and course delivery. Another approach to the future of learning is, I like this article very much. This is by Randy Bass, and all these sources are in the abstract that's provided in your package. Randy Bass talked about how the formal curriculum is being squeezed by the informal, particularly culture and high impact and experiential learning. And the notion that we will be using e-portfolios to connect the formal and the informal and experiential. A portfolio with the learner at the center, not the curriculum. He talks about a post-course era where the curriculum, the formal curriculum, becomes less and less relevant to what it is that the student is learning more broadly in a participatory culture and web-based communities especially. He also talks about the fact that we don't really use what we know about learning very much back in the classroom. The brain changes structure and function in response to experience. It's a dynamic system. And new neuronal pathways are strengthened the more they are used and reinforced in various ways. And so learning is strengthened. And all this could be used, but we tend not to use it. So the idea, and there's valuable lessons one can learn right now from brain research if we were so inclined. And my last sort of contextual slide is Mark Milline, who's I always like reading and listening to. He talks about this wonderful golden age of learning. We have this huge challenge of having to shift learning, but these wonderful tools at hand. And he says those of us who are educators and who love experimenting to improve and expand education opportunities should do our best to make the most of the moment. We are entering a golden age of learning, and that's what I'm trying to inspire in my institution. We're in the last year of this strategic plan where we focused on quality, reputation, and relevance. Our vision for 2018 was to be a leading polytechnic university with, among other things, open and creative learning environments. My message to the university as president was we are in perfect alignment, our mission and our vision and our values with the future of learning. We should be a crucible of innovation in teaching and learning, relevant, personalized, and impactful. So this is a picture of some of our campuses. We are a teaching university primarily with some very good relevant research. We serve a population of about 1 million people, 20,000 students, most of whom live at home. We're a commuter campus. And about 100 languages are spoken at home by our students, so it's an incredibly diverse institution. The good news is that our students are relatively happy, plus or minus 94%, yet these are different types of student, their happiness measured over the years, but we're pretty steadily high in the 90s in terms of student satisfaction with their instruction, satisfaction with their education. The employment of our students is very high. The employment in their related field of study also is high. It's pretty steady anyway over the years. And also the usefulness of the knowledge that they acquired at KPU is deemed also to be very high on average there, averaging around, sorry, wrong slide, averaging around 86%. And then the last one, this just came out, is the unemployment. You'll notice that our graduates have fairly low unemployment for young people, largely in their mid-20s when they graduate. Now that's the good news. The statistics the big statistics, the aggregate statistics, seem to suggest that we're doing a pretty good job, so what's the problem? Well, the offsetting news is this. I don't know if you've ever seen an overhead projector before. We actually ran out of the acetate rolls that feed the overhead projectors. You can't buy them anymore, so there's now a black market on the acetate rolls for the overhead projector. Faculty will do anything but digitize their notes. We have no strategy or plan up until recently for teaching and learning, so it's hard for me as a president, as a leader, to invest strategically when there is no plan. There is no common dialogue, and Dr. Rivera's, I think one of the great outcomes of her approach with the junior teachers is to give them a common dialogue and a common framework with which to talk about pedagogy with each other. We are decentralized to a fault. We have 800 faculty, all with blinking lights on and off, doing their own thing. And there's no governance. We will talk in Senate and in other governance structures about anything but teaching. We will talk about curriculum until the lights go out, but we will not talk about how we teach. And we have no observatory for watching what's coming down the track. What is this future of learning? We're not talking about that future of learning. So that's what we need to do. And as a result, we don't have coherent approaches to underserved populations because we've kind of got stuck, I think, in a certain mode. Well, the good news is we have a vice provost for teaching and learning who we stole from a major university. She has been out and about talking to a lot of faculty. She's done all the hard work of talking to individual faculty, and that's where the title came from. Because there's quite a lot of cynicism out there. And one person said to her, well, look, I'm going to be here a lot longer than the president. I'm just waiting for the president to leave. Because a new president comes in, I've got big ideas, I want to do this, I want to do this. If you just keep your head low, you keep doing the job, my statistics are okay, I don't have to worry, he'll be long gone before I retire. So now I have to change that. Obviously, I'm hoping that I can somehow change the culture of the institution to say, look, we're pretty good, but we could be better, and there's a train coming down the tracks, and if we will one day wake up and realize that it's too late. So she's been building trust with relationships with faculty. She's inculcating the notion that you need instructional design. You need to work with somebody who knows pedagogy to do better. She's undertaken a survey of the digital literacy of the faculty. And she held her first teaching and learning symposium just last month, and it was a great success. We have some great examples. We've used open educational resources and open educational approaches as a Trojan horse to get some of the faculty who are interested, and we've supported them. So we have some wonderful things like this small private online courses. It's an antidote to a MOOC. It's beautifully done. One of our faculty has designed this teaching system that's very personalized, very engaging, and completely online. And the plan going forward is to, one, persist. We have to keep going. We have to keep the agenda in front of people to make some short-term fixes. So, for instance, to get rid of all the overhead projectors and digitize every classroom to make sure that there is no excuse. You go in, everything works, I'm ready to go. Try not to be too top-down. Let the faculty generate the strategy through a process which Dr. Chu is working on right now, and she's going to deliver that in September. It will go into next year's budget. We will start funding the global strategy in terms of supporting faculty, the 800 faculty. I think there's an opportunity for KPU, because it's been fairly static for a while, to actually leapfrog into a new era and not make some of the mistakes that we've seen our colleagues undertake. But my role long-term is to shift KPU's culture from that of process and discussion to one of discovery and delivery. I need to get excited as a leader, to stay excited about this golden age of learning that Mark Milline talks about. Make sure we have a rock-solid mission and clearly expressed values and vision. Encourage and seed and reward innovation. Develop a few specific and inspiring goals and then get out of the way. Let the faculty and the departments and the support services then go about the task of achieving those goals and being ready for this future and being very much part of the future of learning. And of course, to be a learner myself, which is why I'm here, to learn about agent-based modeling and things like that, which I've never heard of, and see whether or not there's any applicability of that. Because the fact is, and that's my last slide, those who spend more and more in raising the value and cost of the status quo, that's the only slide I could picture of status quo that I could find. Does anybody remember status quo? No, you're too young. The cost of the status quo as a differentiating advantage will always fail in competition with the innovators, and we have to be innovative in our teaching and learning. As a teaching university, it's central, it's core to our mission, and we expect to be, and we should be, better, as good as we can be, and better than others if we can be. I've given the resources in my abstract, in the little book there, and I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, for an excellent presentation. Also a nice dose of honesty there and some humility as well. I think that many of us in this room can empathise with your situation. At my own university, when we went through, we're probably about 2 years ahead, if I could be use that sort of terminology. But one of the difficulties that we had is that we went on a strategy of both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. And the challenge we faced after probably 18 months was that the top end got better and much better. And so the gap between the top and the bottom actually grew quite a lot. And our strategy was, in part, we were hopeful that the cultural change which was emanating would drag the bottom along with it. But there was a pretty rusted-on core at the bottom who were deliberately oblivious to everything in the world going on around them. And so it's more so a comment, I guess, but the question that follows is, how do you engage those who deliberately disengage? And have you actually worked through, as you're moving along this strategy, how you do have to occasionally wield a bit of a stick, as well as having a very engaged strategic plan, leadership style? You seem to have someone great in the portfolio there who's making real changes.
That's a very good question. One thing I didn't mention about Kwantlen Polytechnic University is a public university. It's in a province which is the most heavily unionized in Canada, and the faculty union is very strong and will protect the status quo on behalf of its members. If they were in the room, I would say this anyway. They tend to, we became a Polytechnic University having been a 2-year college, so we evolved as an institution. I would say that the faculty union and its collective agreement has not evolved. And so they tend to control a lot of things that in most universities would not be controlled, such as academic freedom, such as faculty performance. And essentially, there is certainly a culture that if you keep your head down and just do your job, you're fine. If you stick your head up and do crazy things like teach on 2 campuses and use technology, or do crazy things that go above and beyond the normal workload, then stop, because you're undermining your colleagues. So there is a bit of a culture there. That's shifting a bit. I'm trying to engage them a lot. We have collective bargaining coming up in 2019. I've started the discussion with them to say we have to do things differently if we are going to thrive as a Polytechnic University. So come with me. Here's an opportunity to do that together. I don't know if I'll succeed. I'll let you know. The next triennial, I'll tell you how well I did on that. But you're right. And the other thing, I don't think you can let that sort of 25% drag stop everybody else. The top end, yeah, I think you're right. My brightest and best are going to lead. There's going to be a bit of a gap, and I'm just hoping that I don't kind of break the connection between them and people will move along. Once you get a few faculty involved and a few faculty retire, some young blood comes in, the new faculty are amazing. They are just ready to go. They're ready to do all kinds of things. So although the retirements aren't happening the way they were predicted, there will be more retirements. Every new faculty member is, in a sense, an opportunity. And going back to Dr. Rivera's presentation, I should be taking more opportunity to sort of inculcate, you know, our values and our approaches and our sense of excitement about the future of teaching with them, and give them the kind of boot camp that she was talking about, and give them a common language so they can start to. And as that happens, it may take a generation. I have to say, it could be a generational shift, but it has to happen and will happen, or the institution will not thrive.
Any other question?
Long answer, sorry.
I have one last question to you, if it's possible. Yeah, as you incentivize also your champions in innovation, what are your criteria? How do you identify those champions?
Well, first of all, I leave some things to the provost to do, because he's in charge of that. And there is a call. We have a teaching fellows program, which you can apply for, and you put in a proposition. There's a peer review of that. We try to keep it pretty open and transparent. Right now, you know, the available resources match the level of interest. Hopefully that will change, and there's going to be much more competitive. And I'll be able to add resources as I see the interest grow, but it will be, I think, more competitive. That people have to identify, you know, clearly where they're trying to innovate, rather than just invest in the status quo.